Hi there, I'm Doireann McDermott and you've just tuned in to Dúchascopy TV today. Now I'm joined in the studio by Mahmoud Elkhafif and he's an economist at UNCTAD here in Geneva. So we're going to have a look at the recent report which looks at the isolation and disintegration of the Palestinian economy in East Jerusalem. Now 1 billion indirect losses into the Palestinian economy has actually been due to the Israeli separation barrier. Now, welcome today. Thanks very much for coming to the studio.
Thank you.
Now, can you tell me what are the main challenges facing Palestinian Jerusalemites today?
Actually, I would like to go a little bit back because the decline of the economy in East Jerusalem started back in 1967 when East Jerusalem was first occupied. Actually, since that time, the border of East Jerusalem has been redefined one time and then redefined again by the construction of the barrier around East Jerusalem that separates between Israel and the West Bank. So since that time, the redefinition of the border and also number of restriction on mobility of goods and people in and out of East Jerusalem between the occupied Palestinian territory and East Jerusalem, that puts lots of constraint on the economy of Jerusalem. For example, I mean, the economy of Jerusalem relative to the economy of the occupied Palestinian territory in the West Bank and Gaza used to, 25 years ago, used to be about 15%. Now it's only 7%. And also, I mean, you can see that the population of East Jerusalem itself East Jerusalem, inside the barrier and outside the barrier, it's about 360,000. However, 55,000 of them are outside the barrier and they have no longer access to go into East Jerusalem. They have to get permit to get there. Also, I mean, the barriers and the restriction that has even been enforced before the barrier prevent East Jerusalem Palestinian from taking advantage of cheap goods and factory production coming from the West Bank and Gaza. Also, they have no longer access to the cheap labor market from the West Bank. And also it's more difficult for them to work in the West Bank and Gaza. So actually they are living under a very awkward condition, and this condition actually has been reflected in the economic condition in the city itself. For example, since 1997, 280 shops have been closed.
And what are some of the main economic sectors and how do they actually contribute to output and employment? And of course, what difficulties are they facing?
Actually, the political conditions they left their mark clearly on the economic structure of the city. Since 1967 and especially since 2003, with the construction of the barrier, there were some structural shifts in the relative size of the sector. For example, the manufacturing sector and agricultural sector are declining, relatively speaking. The construction sector is also declining, but mainly because of restriction on permits in Palestinian neighborhoods. For example, 13% of the annexed area of Israel, which was annexed by Israel in 1967, 13% of the area of the annexed area is only designated for housing for the Palestinians, as opposed to 3 times as much for the area designated for the Israeli settlers. Tourism also is not doing very well. For example, in 1998, there were about 48 hotels with 2,220 rooms. In 2010, there are only 29 hotels with 1,500 hotels. So you can tell that the impact on the economy is severe. Of course, this has an impact on employment. Most of Palestinian Israelis, they go seek jobs in Israel. They are not able to get high-skilled jobs. They get low-skilled jobs, and therefore the wage relative to Jewish population is much lower. So as you can see, I mean, here there is only one sector that actually doing relatively better, is transportation sector. And this is mainly because of the barrier, because of it's not easy to move from one area to another. That's why people tend to use public transportation, I mean, private public transportation.
And because employment has been decreasing, now what sort of impact has this had on education, poverty, and all these kind of other issues that relate to it?
Of course, there is a direct relationship between unemployment rate and poverty rate. As I said before, the average wage that a Palestinian gets from who lives in East Jerusalem, it's half that of a Jewish Israeli. For example, a Palestinian gets $2,000 per month. The average Israeli, it's about $4,000 per month. This has direct impact on poverty, on education, and social sector in general. On poverty, for example, I could tell you some figures regarding the Palestinian children. About 85% of them are characterized as poor, while in the case of Jewish children, it's about 45% living in the same city. In terms of education, situation is not that good at all. For example, half of the classrooms in the city of East Jerusalem, which is about 700 of them, are substandard. 220 of them are actually are in unfit buildings. For example, the dropout among Palestinians is about 50%, while the dropout among Jewish population is about 7%. And it goes on like that. For example, the reflection on the poverty, I mean, the poverty is high in Israel, but while the poverty is high and while the Palestinian living in Jerusalem, I'm talking about in this case about Greater Jerusalem in the Israeli definition of the border, while the population, Palestinian population in the Greater Jerusalem represent about 1/3 of the population, there are only 3 welfare offices in this neighborhood, while in West Jerusalem there are about 16 welfare offices. So it's not only that the poverty is high, but also the attention that they get is very low. If we look at the municipality distribution of municipality budget, while 1/3 of the population are Palestinian, their share in the municipal budget is about 13%, is less than 13%. All of this has great impact on the poverty and the well-being of the Palestinian population in the city.
So clearly something really needs to be done to face these and tackle these problems. Now, in terms of interventions, what does UNCTAD suggest as recommendations to solve these type of problems? And in terms of the future, what do you see ahead for the Palestinian community in East Jerusalem?
Well, we have to address this issue in the political context. According to the UN, the city of East Jerusalem is still an occupied territory. So our recommendations actually goes to the international community, the Israeli Authority, as well as the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian people living in the city itself. For the Israeli Authority, I think they could do much more as far as relieving the pressure and the hardship imposed on the Palestinian population. That's number one. For the international community as well as the National Palestinian Authority, I think there is a room for a better coordination as far as the intervention is concerned. In a sense, we need to coordinate our intervention in city. We need not to overlap with one another. Also, there is a package of financial package that a city need, and this financial package, UNCTAD recommends that it should be targeted for a specific sector, and also we could target a specific geographical area in the city, and after that we could move on to the other areas. UNCTAD also recommend that we need to have a look at those surviving industries. How did they survive under occupation? And maybe we could replicate this experience. But the most important recommendation is the issue of survival itself under these circumstances, in our opinion, is a development strategy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, that is it for right now. But continuing the theme of survival, employment, and education divides and wages divides in the world, I will be looking at this in further detail with the International Labour Organization tomorrow. But for now, goodbye.